Tell me, does this feeling sound familiar? When morning begins, not with energy, but with a certain stiffness? When your hand trembles slightly as you hold your cup of tea and you brush it off thinking, oh, old age is no joy. Or perhaps loved ones have started saying that you speak quietly, almost whispering, and your face has become less expressive, like a mask. We so often attribute these small but persistent changes to the years we've lived. Well, what can you do? I'm not 20 anymore, we tell ourselves and our doctors. But what if I told you that some of these symptoms, seemingly just age-related, could actually be the first quiet warning signs of a serious condition, Parkinson's disease? This disease is insidious because it creeps up unnoticed, gradually destroying the cells in our brain that produce dopamine, the substance responsible for the smoothness and precision of our movements, and for our good mood too. Imagine an orchestra conductor who suddenly starts losing rhythm, and soon the music becomes disjointed, instruments coming in at the wrong times. Similarly, a lack of dopamine disrupts the coordinated work of our body. Attributing everything to age is like closing your eyes to a small wisp of smoke that could flare into a large fire. But today, together, we will learn to recognize these early signals. I promise that after our conversation, you will understand your body better, be able to notice worrying signs in time, and, most importantly, realize that early diagnosis is not a sentence, but a chance to take control of the situation and maintain your quality of life for many years to come. All the advice will be simple and understandable, without complex medical terminology. Stay with me until the end, and you will learn what truly deserves attention, so you don't miss something important. And here is the first such signal, often disguised as ordinary fatigue or nerves, a slight, barely noticeable tremor. We are used to thinking that hand trembling is due to anxiety or tiredness. But there is a nuance worth paying attention to. Do not ignore a slight tremor, especially if it occurs at rest, and initially only in one hand or even a finger. Let me tell you the story of John, who is 70 years old. John had always been a calm, thoughtful man who enjoyed reading the newspaper in the morning over a cup of coffee. One day, he noticed that his right thumb twitched slightly when his hand was simply resting on his knee. At first, he didn't think much of it. Maybe he had just positioned his hand awkwardly, but the tremor kept reappearing, especially when he was relaxed. He didn't tell anyone. He was embarrassed. His wife, Mary, was the first to notice. "John, dear, your finger is trembling, as if you're rolling something." He dismissed it. "It's nothing, Mary, just nerves." Inside, anxiety stirred, but he pushed it away. "I'm getting old, that's all," he convinced himself. At a checkup with his general practitioner, he mentioned it briefly, but the doctor didn't focus on it either. "Blood pressure normal?" "It happens at your age. Take some sedatives." But the tremor didn't go away. Over time, it became more noticeable, sometimes spreading to his entire hand. John started hiding his hand in his pocket when he sat down. He felt awkward, vulnerable. What was really happening? This type of tremor, the so-called rest tremor, is one of the most characteristic early signs of Parkinson's disease. It occurs when muscles are relaxed and often lessens or disappears with movement. Imagine the movement control system in the brain is like a delicate clock mechanism. With a dopamine deficiency, this mechanism starts to malfunction, and this fine, rhythmic tremor appears, often resembling pill rolling between the fingers. This differs from the so-called essential tremor, which usually worsens during purposeful movement, like trying to bring a spoon to your mouth. When John, finally urged by Mary, consulted a neurologist and described the nature of the tremor in detail, the doctor suspected something was wrong. After an examination, the diagnosis was confirmed. Yes, it wasn't easy to accept. But do you know what John said later? "I wish I had gone to the doctor sooner. How many months I suffered from doubt and fear. Now I have a treatment plan. I take medications that help control the tremor, and I feel much more confident." By paying attention to such a specific tremor at an early stage, you give yourself a chance for timely diagnosis. Starting treatment early helps manage symptoms better, maintain activity and independence for longer. This doesn't mean you should panic about every little shake. But if you notice a rest tremor, especially one-sided, it's a strong reason to discuss it with a doctor, preferably a neurologist. Don't dismiss your body's signals. Listen to them carefully. But tremor isn't the only motor sign that can appear subtly. Sometimes our own handwriting gives us a clue. Have you noticed that writing has become more difficult and the letters seem to shrink towards the end of the line? Pay attention if your handwriting has become noticeably smaller, letters more cramped, and the act of writing itself requires more effort. We often blame deteriorating eyesight or arthritis in the fingers, right? Let's remember Margaret, 68. She loved writing letters to her grandchildren, signing holiday cards. She always had beautiful, legible handwriting. But over the last 6 months, she began noticing that the lines seemed to bunch up towards the end, the letters becoming tiny, almost unreadable. She started buying thicker pens, stronger glasses, but it didn't help. Writing became tiring, her hand quickly fatigued, and the result frustrated her. "I've completely forgotten how to write. It's like chicken scratch," she grumbled to herself. She felt annoyed and embarrassed when her granddaughter asked, "Grandma, why have you started writing so small? I can barely read it." Margaret felt sad, thinking it was just another sign she was slowing down. But the reason was deeper. This phenomenon is called micrographia, and it's also linked to a lack of dopamine. Our brain is responsible not only for initiating movement, but also for its amplitude, its scale. In Parkinson's disease, the brain finds it harder to maintain the normal scale of movements, especially repetitive ones like writing. It's as if you were trying to draw a large circle, but your hand instinctively drew smaller and smaller ones. There's a slowing of movements, called bradykinesia, and increased muscle tone, rigidity, which also affects fine motor skills. Margaret mentioned this to a friend who advised her to bring up the change in handwriting during her neurologist appointment for headaches. The doctor asked her to write a few sentences. Seeing the small, fading handwriting towards the end of the line, he asked additional questions about other symptoms. It turned out Margaret had other early signs she had attributed to age. The change in handwriting became an important part of the overall picture. Your handwriting can be an unexpected indicator of your nervous system's health. If you've noticed it has become consistently small, cramped, and writing is more difficult, don't rush to blame only your eyes or joints. Tell your doctor about it. It might be another piece of the puzzle that helps make the right diagnosis in time. Early detection allows for supportive therapy, including special exercises for fine motor skills, which can help maintain self-care abilities. Your handwriting isn't just letters on paper, it's a reflection of how your brain is working. Sometimes, the earliest signals come not through movement, but through our other senses. For example, through our sense of smell. What's the connection, you might ask? But there is one, and it's very important. Pay attention to your nose. Have you started having trouble distinguishing smells, or have you stopped smelling them altogether? Loss of smell, or anosmia, seems minor, especially if there's no cold. Well, everything dulls with age, we think. Here's the story of Arthur, 72. He was an avid gardener, proud of his incredibly fragrant roses. Every summer, he savored their scent. But a couple of years ago, he noticed the roses smelled almost like nothing. He thought maybe the variety had degenerated or the weather was wrong. Then his wife, Helen, started complaining that he couldn't smell when something was burning on the stove. He himself was surprised when he couldn't catch the aroma of freshly brewed coffee that used to fill the house. He shrugged. Probably some chronic nasal issue I don't even know about. It never occurred to him to link it to anything serious. He was a bit sad that the world had lost some of its colors for him, the sense of flowers, baking, rain, but attributed it to inevitable age-related changes. Meanwhile, loss of smell is one of the earliest non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Surprisingly, it can appear years before movement problems like tremor or stiffness become noticeable. It's believed that the pathological changes associated with the accumulation of the alpha-synuclein protein, characteristic of Parkinson's, often begin in the olfactory bulb, the part of the brain responsible for processing smells. It's like the radio receiver of your nose starts losing signal due to interference in the brain. Arthur mentioned this during a routine checkup with his general practitioner. Fortunately, the doctor was attentive and aware of the link between loss of smell and neurological diseases. He referred Arthur to a neurologist. Although Arthur had almost no motor symptoms, the examination and specific smell tests confirmed a very early stage of Parkinson's disease. Underestimating the loss of smell means missing a very important early marker. If you've noticed that smells have become weaker or disappeared completely, and it's not related to a cold, allergies, or COVID-19, be sure to tell your doctor. This is important not only for the possible early diagnosis of Parkinson's, but also for your safety. After all, our sense of smell warns us about gas leaks, spoiled food, smoke. Early detection allows for starting preventive measures, changing lifestyle, and finding therapies that may slow the onset of motor impairments. Your nose is a sensitive guardian. Don't ignore its silence. And sometimes, the warning signs appear during sleep. It sounds strange, but this is also one of the early harbingers, usually noticed not by the individuals themselves, but by their loved ones. Ask your spouse if you become overly active in your sleep, shouting, flailing your arms, fighting, falling out of bed. Meanwhile, you might remember nothing in the morning. David, 69, had always slept peacefully, but his wife, Eleanor, 66, started waking up at night because David was talking loudly in his sleep, yelling, fighting off someone invisible, sometimes even swinging his arms so much he almost hit her. Once, he fell out of bed. In the morning, Eleanor would tell him about it, frightened and sleep-deprived. David was very surprised. He remembered absolutely nothing. He had vivid, often disturbing dreams, chases, fights, work situations, but he wasn't aware he was physically participating in them. He blamed it on stress or watching an action movie before bed. Just nightmares getting wild, he'd say. He felt awkward around Eleanor, guilty about her worry, but didn't think it was a symptom of anything serious. This condition is called REM sleep behavior disorder, RBD. Normally, when we dream, which happens during the REM phase of sleep, our brain sends signals that paralyze most of our body's muscles, so we don't run or jump in our sleep, acting out our dreams. In RBD, this mechanism of muscle paralysis breaks down. The person begins to physically live out their dreams. Why is this important in the context of Parkinson's disease? Research shows that RBD is one of the strongest predictors of developing neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's or Lewy body dementia, often many years before motor symptoms appear. It's as if a safety fuse, meant to protect you from a short circuit between dreams and reality, has broken. Eleanor read about this in a medical article and persuaded David to see a sleep specialist, somnologist, and a neurologist. A sleep study, polysomnography, confirmed the RBD diagnosis. Although David had no obvious signs of Parkinson's at the time, doctors warned him of the high risk and recommended regular monitoring by a neurologist. A few years later, his first motor symptoms did appear, sleep, e.g., removing sharp corners near the bed, putting a mattress on the floor. Knowledge is power, even when it concerns what happens while you sleep. What happens in your sleep can tell a lot about your waking health. Of course, as the disease progresses, more noticeable motor impairments appear, which are harder to dismiss simply as aging. Perhaps you or your loved ones have started noticing general stiffness, clumsiness. Do you notice unusual muscle stiffness, especially in the mornings, that takes a long time to resolve? Has it become harder for you to initiate movements, getting up from a chair, taking the first step? Have movements become somewhat slowed, awkward? Maybe your gait has become shuffling. Michael, 71, had always been an active man, enjoying walks and gardening. But gradually, he began to feel as though he were moving through thick jelly. In the morning, it was hard to get out of bed. His muscles felt wooden. He found it difficult to quickly fasten buttons on his shirt or tie his shoelaces. Getting up from his favorite armchair became a real challenge. He'd rock back and forth, lean on the armrests, groan. He joked, getting old, rusting away slowly. He started going out less because walking became harder. His feet seemed disobedient, and he began to shuffle. His son, visiting, noticed the change with concern. "Dad, you're moving kind of slowly. What happened?" Michael brushed it off, saying he was just tired, hadn't slept well. Deep down, he was afraid to admit to himself that he was losing his former ease and strength, attributing everything to the natural process of aging. This stiffness, rigidity, and slowness of movement, bradykinesia, are already core motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease. Rigidity isn't just muscle pain. It's increased muscle tone that can feel like resistance during passive limb movement. A doctor might feel the cogwheel phenomenon. Bradykinesia isn't just slowness. It's difficulty initiating movement and a decrease in its amplitude and speed. Imagine the gas pedal in your car becoming stiff and the engine sputtering. That's roughly how the lack of dopamine affects the brain's ability to generate smooth, automatic movements. A shuffling gait, shortened steps, lack of arm swing while walking. These are all manifestations of bradykinesia and rigidity. Michael's son insisted on a visit to the neurologist. The doctor immediately noted the characteristic stiffness, slowness of movement, and changes in gait. The diagnosis of Parkinson's disease was a shock for Michael, but also a relief. Now it was clear what was happening to him, and that it wasn't just laziness or old age. He was prescribed medications that replenished dopamine and recommended physical exercises. Gradually, the stiffness lessened. Movements became freer. Michael realized how important it had been not to delay seeing the doctor. If you or your loved ones have noticed increasing stiffness, slowness, difficulty initiating movements, a shuffling gait, this is a very serious reason to consult a neurologist. These are no longer subtle signs, but quite distinct signals. Starting treatment early at this stage can significantly improve motor functions and allow you to remain active and independent for longer. Don't resign yourself to stiffness, thinking it's normal. Your body deserves ease of movement at any age. And finally, two more signs that also affect our interaction with the world, but often go unnoticed: changes in voice and facial expression. Have people around you started saying that your voice has become quiet, monotonous, emotionless? Do you notice yourself, or through others' comments, that your face has become less mobile, less expressive, as if you are constantly dissatisfied or indifferent? She felt misunderstood, as if her emotions were no longer being read by others. These are also manifestations of Parkinson's disease: hypophonia, quiet, weak voice, and hypomimia, reduced facial expressiveness, the so-called masked face. The muscles of the larynx, responsible for voice volume, and the facial muscles are just as affected by rigidity and bradykinesia as limb muscles. The brain finds it harder to control these seemingly automatic functions: voice modulation, smiling, expressing surprise or sadness. It's like an actor who suddenly forgets to use facial expressions and intonation, making their speech monotonous and their face immobile. Susan shared her feelings with a friend who had recently seen a speech therapist for another reason. The friend suggested she consult one. Perhaps there were special exercises for the voice. The speech therapist, noticing not only the quiet voice, but also some stiffness in the facial muscles, recommended Susan see a neurologist. It turned out that hypophonia and hypomimia were part of the overall picture of early-stage Parkinson's disease. Susan started a special voice therapy program, like LSVT Loud, and her voice became significantly louder and more expressive. This greatly helped her communication with loved ones. If you notice changes in your voice or facial expressions, or if your loved ones constantly point them out, don't attribute it to a bad mood or fatigue. This could be an important signal requiring specialist attention. Restoring normal voice volume and working on facial expressions not only improve communication, but also restore self-confidence. Speech therapy methods specifically designed for Parkinson's patients can be very effective. Your voice and your face are your tools for communicating with the world. Take care to ensure they sound and look clear. So, these seemingly different symptoms, from a trembling finger and small handwriting to lost smells and restless sleep, from stiffness to a quiet voice, can point to one cause that is too often ignored and blamed on age. My dear friends, today we have discussed several important signals. Remember, these are not necessarily signs of Parkinson's disease in you, but they are strong reasons to be vigilant and consult a doctor, especially if you notice a combination of several of these signs. Your wisdom and life experience are invaluable gifts, but they shouldn't prevent you from taking care of your health today. You have every right to feel well, to have clarity and understanding about what is happening with your body at any age. Don't be afraid to ask doctors questions. Don't hesitate to talk about what worries you, even if it seems trivial. Early detection of Parkinson's disease is not the end of the road, but the beginning of a new stage where modern medicine and your own determination can help you live a full, active life for many more years. Remember, knowledge is your strength. Believe in yourself, listen to your body, and know that you are not alone. Take care of yourselves and be well.